Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 158 in the series. Welcome back to the Yarn Room. I know it's been a little bit of time. Usually I podcast every other weekend or so, but lately it's been a little more like 3 weeks or 4 weeks in between a cast. So for those of you who are waiting, I'm here, I'm back. I've been working on the book. Many of you know I'm writing a book about textiles and chemistry right now, and I am on the 4th chapter, which is great. But it is taking like all of my spare brain power. I'm kind of like setting things aside left and right to try to work on this book. So one of the things that's getting set aside for a little longer are these podcast episodes. But I appreciate seeing you here and you're coming back around to hang out with me. I do have a new sweater to talk about today and some works in progress and all kinds of, you know, usual sweatery things. So if you're returning, thanks for coming back and hanging out with me, even after a little bit of a gap. And if you're new, welcome. This is a podcast mostly about sweater design, modification, garment kind of stuff, though I do knit all the rest of the stuff too, socks and shawls, and I haven't knit socks in a while though. I should say shawls, hats, mittens, things like that. But today we are going to focus on sweaters. And if you're looking for me online, I am Knitting the Stash just about everywhere on Ravelry, Instagram, YouTube, obviously, and over on the main website, knittingthestash.com. I'll put the address here. That's where you can find the Flock Farm Yarn Shop, where I have a lot of wonderful indie yarns from across the country. We're going to talk about one of those today. You can also find my online classes there. There are 4 full-length online classes. One of them is free, and they're all about garment modification and design. So yeah, help yourself. I hope you head over there and check it out. Yeah, so let's jump in. Today I've got a new sweater. I actually had 2 sweaters, but the first sweater was basically a copy of Spencer's Northland Sweater. So if you watched the last episode Spencer was on, he shared his beautiful Northland sweater with you all that was knit out of Skein's yarn from New Zealand. So I actually ended up knitting a second Northland sweater, and that was for Phineas, my stepson. He requested one basically they were both dark gray and dark green. And his had a little bit more ease built into it. So it was nice. I could work on Spencer's sweater, figure out the pattern. Northland is by Petite Knit. And love her patterns. I hadn't actually knit one of her patterns before, but I tried it out with Northland. I really loved it. The sweater is beautiful. Every time Spencer puts it on, I'm just like, oh my god, it fits. It's perfect. It's just the best sweater. So I knit basically the same thing for Phineas, and before I could even podcast about it, I put it in the post and sent it off because we were at the end of winter, and I thought he might need a sweater for the last month here or so. Yeah, so imagine, if you will, a dark green version of Spencer's sweater out into the world. And the other one that I have for you today is the new sweater by Ailbiona McLochlainn, and this is, I'm going to try the Irish pronunciation, if I haven't already said this. It is Moncha, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's spelled Moncha, and I'll put all the details on the screen here so you can check it out. This sweater actually has a pretty interesting story, and Ailbiona's talked a little bit about it. I think she's going to put up another blog post this weekend or something talking about Shorn and the sweater. But basically, back when she and I first got to know each other, I had knit kind of like a second sweater. It was my second sweater. I had pulled together elements from different sweaters that I had liked because I couldn't find a sweater that I really wanted to knit. My first sweater was kind of a disaster. It was fine, but it just didn't quite fit right, and I learned so much from the process that I wanted to put it into action immediately, right? So my second sweater had a split hem, it had a shawl collar, it had it was from the bottom up, and it had some short row shaping in the back. You know, I had kind of like taken a lot of the little elements that I had learned from reading around in pattern books and like just created this montage Frankenstein sweater that turned out really beautiful. I absolutely loved that sweater, and I actually don't have the sweater anymore. It's one of those tragic stories, but I did have a few pictures, and when Ailbiona and I were getting to know each other, she checked out some of my Ravelry project pages, and she was like, oh, what's that sweater? So she, about, I don't know, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, asked if she could design that, like use it as inspiration to design a sweater, and I said, absolutely, go for it, you know, and knowing full well that she would do something really cool with it, with the idea, and she did. So this is the Moncha sweater. I'm going to try to keep pronouncing it correctly. And she's, I think Moncha. She's calling it your distant Irish cousin, because it's kind of like a riff on that sweater that I Frankensteined together a long time ago. And it's a beautiful, beautiful sweater, very relaxed, kind of easy to wear sweater, with a split hem, with a long kind of like rib at the bottom, a shawl collar. It's just one of those chill sweaters, right? Like you could just put it on and relax, but it's got enough style to it that you could actually wear it out, and it's just one of those classic kind of sweaters. So I love what she did with the whole thing. I love the ease that she built into it. So it's a much more easygoing sweater. Mine had I can't remember if it had body shaping or not, but it was a pretty straight, just less ease, closer fitting kind of sweater. She went with more ease, and I think it really suits the sweater pretty well. So it is a bottom up sweater. And like I said, I'm showing you the test knit version. I test knit this a long time ago, maybe last summer. I think it might have been last summer. So this is the test knit. So there are a couple changes to the pattern, obviously in between. So one of the big changes was that she added some more rows, I think, to the short rows, added some more short rows to the shawl collar. So what I've got mine pinned right here, because we were going back and forth about talking about it when I was doing the test knit, and I'm actually gonna pop off my bind off and add a few more rows, just like she's done, to give it a little more volume. So that's why you have just a pin here. I'm gonna pop it off, but you can see it's kind of neat. You can see the construction of the shawl collar because I have just the pin in here. So let me see if I can pull this out, because we don't need it. So the shawl collar is put on at the end, and you're basically, picking up stitches around the outside, and you can see that, you sew down the one placket, and the other placket is, you sew down after the fact. But you're basically just knitting what looks like, in some ways, it's kind of like a button band from the, this upper Henley portion of the sweater. But what you're doing is you're shaping it with short rows. So up in the back, if you've ever knit a shawl collar, you're basically getting more volume up here than you are in the front, so that it will turn and lay flat, right? So that is the shawl collar, which is pretty cool. And the rest of the design is actually pretty easy going. Like I said, it has a split hem, which I love. You guys know I love my split hems. I have a tutorial over on YouTube about that. But I think Ailbiona's pattern, she has a really nice little trick here for doing the split hem and kind of joining them when they're together to kind of create this perfect little arch. So lots of nice details in this pattern. You can learn a few extra things if you want to. I kind of like this long rib. I wasn't sure about it in the beginning. It blocks out really nicely, and it's such a deep rib that it has this kind of length in the back. I don't know, I just like the ease factor on this sweater. It's very easy to wear, like I keep saying. I feel like I should pin this back down just so you get the full effect. I think I will. I'll pin it back down before I fix it, which I need to do. There we go. Ta-da! Okay. So one of the cool things, besides the fact that this is like a distant version, a riff on a pattern that I pulled together, a sweater design I pulled together a long time ago, the other cool thing is that Ailbiona knit her version in Shorn. So Shorn, for those of you who have been hanging around for a long time, know that Shorn is a yarn that I produce. I was producing it every year. Kathy gave up her flock, so this last year it's taken me a little longer to gather all the yarn for Shorn, the next Shorn, Shorn 5. But Shorn 4 is all fleece from Kathy Capel's farm, her flock in Illinois, and it was milled in Michigan, and it's from the 2021 clip. So if you're familiar with fiber processing at all, if you send fleece to a mill, which is what I do with Shorn, I get all the fleece, I skirt them, I sort them by color, we, talk to the mill, decide what to do, yarn design, how many plies, all that kind of stuff. But once you send your fleece off to the mill, it can take, nowadays, because so many mills are closing, nowadays it takes somewhere between like 9 and 12 months to get your yarn back. So when you have a 2021 clip, and you send it off, you don't usually get it back until like 2022 or 2023. So that's why it's a 2021 clip if you're curious about the whole process of milling fiber. And once you get it back, when I get my Shorn back, I often, well, every year so far, this is the 4th year, you know, I talk to designers. Designers use the yarn to knit up awesome patterns. So we have accessories for Shorn that were out last year, and many of you were so kind to like get the kits and make the stuff, and I see all your patterns on Ravelry and it's wonderful to see, so thanks for supporting Shorn. And this time it's just really cool to me because now Shorn has a sweater. It's like an official sweater. So if you look at Albina's version, the gray version that she has, this gray version on her Ravelry page, I'll put a couple pictures up here in the podcast, that is Shorn. Yes, Shorn has a sweater. It's so exciting. So I do still have some Shorn left in the shop. There's not a whole lot. So if you're interested in using Shorn, a farm-to-skein yarn, to make your Moncha sweater, get over there to knittingthestash.com and check out the Shorn line of yarns. There's some Shorn IV left. Not a lot. I was looking, I did some inventory right before this episode and I was like, what? I thought I had a few more skeins than I had. So we're getting down there to the last batch of little skeins for Shorn. But if you're interested in making a sweater, I would love to have you make a sweater out of Shorn. It is 250 yards per skein, per 3.5 ounce skein, and it's a DK weight, a 3-ply, I think you can see it there, and it's Corriedale fleece. So Corriedale mixed with a little bit of Teeswater Corriedale cross. So it does have, it's like a medium weight, Corriedale's like a medium weight fleece, and I like it because it's kind of hardy and it doesn't pill as much as a merino would or something like that. But it's not quite as ropey as a long wool. So it's that in that medium kind of category where it's still soft and fluffy and buoyant, but it's not going to pill as much. And with the 3-ply, you get this really nice round yarn. So I just really like the 3-ply DK weight. It's great. Like I said, the accessories that the designers came up with for Shorn this year were amazing. Kendra Castillo came up with a cowl, and Mary Rawick came up with a beautiful wrap. I did a hat called the Ziggy hat. So Shorn has a few patterns out there in the world now, which is so nice to see. And for those of you who have stuck around this long and who have been watching for a while, Shorn V, the next Shorn, is back from the mill. So I can see it right over on my desk right there. It has been, it's been skeined up. I've washed a couple of the skeins to see how they bloom. It is in 3 different colors, a brown, a white, and a gray. It's gorgeous. And if you're interested in designing with Shorn V some accessories, please get in touch with me at knittingthestash@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you, hear your ideas for designing with a farm-to-skein yarn, some accessories. In particular, usually there's not enough for sweater knitting, and in this case, it's probably better off if we stick with accessories. Luckily, Shorn IV, I have enough of it that there are a few sweater quantities left in the shop. So if you're looking forward to Shorn V, it's on the way. I think it'll probably come out in the fall, though I might do a little pre-sale with the newsletter subscribers. So if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, that's on knittingthestash.com. Might do a little pre-sale over there even before the patterns and the designers get involved. So if you want to get on that list, to have some access, maybe some early access to Shorn V. I love this yarn. I actually knit a sweater out of it. This is the Cuenca sweater, and it appears on a couple of earlier episodes of the podcast. It's a beautiful sweater that came out in Amirisu magazine. I cannot remember the designer's name for the life of me right now, but I will put it in right here on the screen. And this was an interesting sweater because I absolutely love, this sweater is so soft because it's Shorn, and you can see that those 3 plies really make for a beautiful, plump, cable-y, like if you want to do cables with this yarn, it is a cable-y yarn, so it's pretty gorgeous, and I just really love that cable. Anyway, this sweater was tricky because it is knit top down, and you're knitting these cables right across the yoke and the sleeves. So if you want to find out more about the Cuenca sweater, head over and check out the other episodes that it appears in. I actually knit the yoke twice in this and have some tips for you about needle size and how to manage your cable pattern across the front of the sweater, because it's a sweater where if you don't manage your needle size and you don't manage your pattern repeats quite right, I think it ends up being too small and too tight the way that it was designed. So I have some tips for you over on that episode. When I reknit it the second time, it is perfect. I love it. It's very warm. And you have this really cool cable detail across the front of the sweater. So anyway, that's Cuenca. I knit this up in Shorn for just for fun, because it's a beautiful sweater and because I love Shorn. This version of Moyniha, I've actually knit up in Brooklyn tweed. So when Ailbiona and I were talking about you know, which yarns to use for the test knit, she was knitting hers in Shorn, and I was going to knit mine in kind of a more mainstream yarn, just to see how the pattern handled a more mainstream yarn and how, like, what kind of result you would get, and to make it a little bit more accessible, so that if somebody's looking at project pages and they happen to have access to something like Brooklyn tweed or one of those more mainstream yarns, then they'd be able to, you know, have access to the yarn. Now, I will say that part of this project, as you'll read on Ailbiona's posts and Instagram and the project page and things like that, or the pattern page, it's really about farm-to-skein yarns, and the other version of the sweater is knit in an Irish farm-to-skein yarn, which is really cool. I love supporting other producers who are taking the fleece off the sheep and like having it milled and making the yarn themselves. It's so great. And Brooklyn tweed actually has a good reputation for being an American-made yarn where they're sourcing the fleece from ranches out west, and they're making these sometimes breed-specific yarns, but almost always with 100% American wool. So that's one of the reasons that I think the Brooklyn tweed choice for this is actually kind of cool. I do not remember the colorway because, like I said, I knit it last summer, but I will put all the info. It's over on my Ravelry project page. The other funny thing about this sweater, I will say, is that Spencer wanted to knit a sweater, my husband, a long time ago, and he was looking for yarn in my stash, and I had a lot of this Brooklyn tweed in this particular colorway, because I had been planning to knit Norgis, oh man, what's it called? It's a beautiful all-over cabled sweater. Anyway, I had a lot of this yarn because cables eat a lot of yarn. And so he has a sweater that's halfway done in a bag somewhere in the room here. And I asked him if it would be okay if I just stole the rest of the yarn for this sweater. So this is actually, I don't know if it's not repurposed yarn. It was all still skeined up, but it was stolen from his sweater project. So his sweater project, I'm not sure it could ever be completed in this yarn now. So I feel a little bit bad about that, but there's a sweater that came out of the yarn. So there you go. There was enough, I had enough yarn in my stash to make like 1.5 sweaters in this Brooklyn tweed yarn. So anyway, I would recommend Brooklyn tweed. I would recommend Shorn. I would recommend, if you're someone over in the UK or the EU, you know, check out that Irish farm-to-skein yarn that Ailbiona used for the other version of the sweater. It's just cool to support people who are actually, you know, helping the producers, like getting out there, buying the fleece from, you know, the actual shepherds and making yarn out of it. So yeah. And Shorn IV, like I said, is in the shop. I have a little bit left before Shorn V comes out. Shorn V is on the way, so exciting times. Now, in the meantime, I have been still knitting, of course. I didn't stop knitting back in the summer of 2023. So I have a new sweater on the needles, and I thought I'd show it to you as a work in progress. I know sometimes you like to see how things look before they are sweaters, before they're born into sweaters. This is the very beginning of the surf sweater by Ankestrick. And this is out of a book. I think she has a whole bunch, maybe it's like Ahoy or something like that. She has a whole bunch of patterns that are kind of inspired by water and the surf and things like that. So this is actually called Surf. And what intrigued me about this sweater is the fact that it has a beautiful drape, if you look at her actual pattern photos. And it is a striped sweater. but it's striped in a fingering weight yarn. So at a distance, you get this kind of cool effect. I'm not sure if it'll have this effect in like this smaller form, but you get this kind of effect of your eye kind of merging these colors together. And this particular sweater, if you look at the design page, I'll put a picture up here, it has some asymmetrical striping in the bodice of the sweater and on the sleeves. So it's a really interesting exercise in thinking about how your eye sees color and what it wants to do with it, and how she said she was inspired by the surf and the waves, and I think that actually comes through pretty well in the actual sweater. What's great about this sweater, I have to say so far, is that she has a trick. If you've surfed YouTube, if you've been looking for like how to work two color striped designs without a jog, and you've been looking for like the best technique, and you've seen all the different videos about like knit one below and this and that and do this and put your yarn here, and it's like all complicated, she has this technique that's like the easiest thing in the world. This is where I'm changing the color. I'm not sure you could actually see where I'm changing. I mean, you can see it because this is, you can tell because it's right, it's here, right? But I'm not sure you could actually pick it out if you looked, and I don't think you could pick it out on the wrong side of the work either. That's pretty amazing. So that's part of the pattern, is how she's doing this one by one stripe without doing any kind of, truly, there's no fancy footwork here. It's just a really interesting little quick technique to be able to switch your yarns. And I think the price of the pattern is worth that alone. I've tried helical knitting, I've tried the knit one below, I've tried all of Patty Lyon's tricks, and if you can Google like single stripes like in different colors and you'll find all kinds of things, but this is the best method I've ever found, and I will use it from here on out forevermore. It's really lovely. The other thing that I'm curious about with this pattern is that some people said they didn't like the radial increases in the yoke portion. So this is the front. I have it just tagged with a little marker there, and you can see there are these radial increases that start up in the right at the top neckline, and they do continue. You can kind of catch them in the light, I guess, just a little bit. Here there's a set of radial increases, and radial increases are just, spaced increases around a yoke, a circular yoke. So if you've ever knit like a colorwork yoke, and you look at the patterning for the colorwork and it's in little wedges, for example, you're doing radial increases because you're increasing, at a certain pace around the sweater yoke, and you're doing it probably 2, 3, or 4 times, depending on how many increases you need to do, throughout the sweater. So anyway, this sweater relies on radial increases, but it also relies on these raglan increases around the sleeve. So you're doing a couple different kinds of increases, and I'm really curious to see, I can't like put this on you because it's on the needles, but I'm curious to see how it all works out in the end. Once the sweater has a lot of fabric to it, and a lot of weight to it, what will actually happen with those radial increases, I can't actually pick them out. I've not been doing the increases that she suggested though. I think it's a knit front and back or something like that, because people were complaining about the purl bumps. I've just been doing like make one left increases for my radial increases. And I like the way that it's turning out. I'm not really noticing it very much. Maybe because the yarn is variegated. So you have this kind of green variegated yarn and a whitish variegated yarn. I'll show them to you in the skein here. So these are the 2 colors I'm working with. And maybe it's just because there's enough variegation and variation in these yarns, I'm not picking up on how those lifted increases are showing up or anything like that. I'm using the original colors that she used. I just liked them, and I looked at some of the project pages, and you have to be a little careful. You don't want to go with like this is a pretty stark, obvious kind of like difference in value between the white and the green, but the green has a lot of like the grayish white in it, so it kind of works, I think. Some of the projects that chose different colors, it really affects the way that the sweater ends up coming out. So like I said at the beginning, this is a project that's all about kind of like what your eye does with color, from being up close, being at a distance, playing with the variegation, and then playing with those lifted increases and the jogless color changes. I'm really enjoying all of these different things. I think once I get past the yoke, what keeps it interesting is going to be those asymmetrical stripes in the white yarn color. So I'm kind of excited to get down there. But right now I'm in kind of increase craziness, trying to like keep track of making sure that I do all the increases in all the right places. I'm also, of course, completely out of gauge. So I'm making one size up in the pattern, assuming that because this is a superwash, it's going to stretch a little bit. We'll see how that works out too. You never know. But that's my main work in progress right now. And I know you all love seeing how things look as they're becoming knits. So that's this one, and I'm pretty excited about it. I'm not sure if green is my color, but maybe I should have gone with the blue. But I do like the fabric, and I love the photos that she had of the sweater online. So we'll see. We'll see if I can create the sweater of my dreams, right? You never know. The other thing I've been working on is using up all of the bright orange yarn in my stash. I know, that sounds weird. I actually have a skein from Ailbiona too that I'm going to bring out and incorporate into this project. So this is the recovery of the orange yarn project. I'm not really, I don't think I bought any of this orange yarn. I think it was Knit Crate sponsorship yarn. I think it was gifted yarn from Ailbiona, things like that. So orange is not like a color that I'm like drawn to. I'm like, oh, orange. I do love, I mean, it's pretty. I think it's cool. I think it's actually really fun to knit with like highlighter-y colors. But these are going to be hats so we can go hiking during hunting season. So there's a purpose. There's a place for things like bright orange yarn. This is the Musselburgh Hat. This is my 4th Musselburgh Hat. Super simple, wonderful pattern. You start at the top, you work your increases, you check your gauge as you're knitting, and then you knit your tube, and then you're going to close it off with this basically at the bottom. I've showed you my other Musselburgh hats. It's a very popular pattern. Many of you have already knit Musselburgh hats. My friends are now knitting Musselburgh hats, so it's one of those patterns that makes the rounds. I love it, and this will get stuffed up inside the other part. We're going to actually have not like cotton hunting hats this year, which will be nice. We have these orange hats that we just bought at, I don't even know, like some big box store somewhere. Spencer came home with them one day, so that you can protect yourself if you're out hiking where there's like hunting going on. But they're not warm, so we always wear them over our wool hats. And it's just, you once you get like 5 layers of hats on, it's kind of like a little dicey. So I'm going for the wool hiking hat this year, and I think I have enough yarn with this and Ailbiona's skein to make another one for Spencer. So we're gonna have our own wool hunting hats, which I'm pretty happy about. This one's almost done. I just need to actually close it up at this point, and then I can start on the next one and the next one probably. So I've been keeping myself busy with that. It's the best. I find like the Musselburgh hat, or if you're knitting, a sweater from the bottom up and you just have plain torso knitting or whatever, bodice knitting. It's the best kind of knitting for meetings and Zooms and, all the times when you want your hands to be busy because it's otherwise really boring. And you need something to occupy yourself. This has been a great project. Plus it's like so cute. I can just take it with me everywhere. So yeah, that's what I've been up to. New sweaters all around. Except I guess this one's a little bit older for my brain. It's a little bit older. I'm excited to go back in, pop off this bind off, and add a little more shawl to the shawl collar on this one. Yeah, so that is what I've been up to. This is the Moncha sweater. I kept saying Moncha, M-O-N-C-H-A. Beautiful sweater from Ailbiona McLochlainn, and if you're interested in getting some Shorn to knit yours up and support this farm-to-skein project and the sweater that goes along with it, you can check out the shop at knittingthestash.com. I'm going to go work on my sweater, chill out, try to have a little bit of a weekend. And I just want to say thanks for hanging out. And a special thanks to the podcast producers. That is Nargis, Lenore, Jennifer, Rose, Erika, and Kendra. Thanks for supporting the podcast. If you're interested in that, you can go over to Patreon and read all about how to support the podcast if you want to. But I appreciate you just hanging out and leaving comments and just doing whatever. Over here on YouTube. It's nice to see you, and I hope you have a lot of wonderful knitting ahead of you this weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.